Hey everybody, it's Amy Heller and I'm here today on June 1st, 2015 with our next edition of Make Use Monday, and today we are going to be repurposing chipboard mini album covers and pocket page sleeves that are damaged that we're going to make into brand new album dividers or planner dashboards. Now here I'm just showing you all the different album covers, chipboard album covers that I have, and what I'm going to show you right now are all of the different configurations for 6 by 9 inch albums. We have Simple Stories, October Afternoon, and this is a one that I had done a December daily in with Studio Calico. Now you could use these really great adhesive they're like extender hole punches from Basic Gray, which I love. Or you can use what you already have on hand to adhere to your chipboard to make new sheets. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take, some of these bum pieces that I'm not going to use for anything other than, I would maybe just toss them. But that's silly when we have something that's already punched out to the holes that I want to use. So what I thought about doing is trimming out just inside the edge of, it's like almost a perforation that they have on these sheets. And I'm going to trim it about 1/4 of an inch beyond that little perforation. And that's going to give me enough of a lip that I can cover and go over my chipboard. Now what I'm going to do, I'm going to show you, see how it's open here? It has just enough of a lip that I can put it over on both sides of my chipboard. Now I'm going to take some double stick tape adhesive just to place it in the right position, because what I'm going to need to do is to make sure that this thing stays put for good is I'm going to stitch it. But right now I'm just going to put some double stick tape on one side and position it so it's completely centered. And now I line up those holes that are on my chipboard in line with the holes that are already on the plastic sleeve. And here I've stitched it all up, as you can see, and this next one I have trimmed right to the edge. So you can see where the stitching is. I'm not really concerned about the loose edges. And now I'm going to show you how these are going to fit in. I have 3 of them done here. And just to show you, I'm going to put them in this December daily just because the holes line up. So what we're going to do now is I'm going to show you, now that we have this leftover piece from trimming out the pre-perforated, we can even use this leftover piece to make our own custom hole punches. So we're not going to let any of this leftover plastic go to waste here. We're gonna go ahead and use those for even more of these album covers. So what I've done here is I've measured it out the same as the other pieces. Instead of using the perforated part, we are going to stitch. So I'm going to trim out the exact size of the other pre-perforated sleeves like we did before, but now I'm going to stitch it with that 1/4 inch. See how I did that? So it's just like acting as if it were that perforation that was in the pre-manufactured sleeves. So I'm going to go through the same process. I'm just putting the double stick tape down, and there's no holes to line up here, so I just lined this up to the edge of the perforation and also down at the bottom, just because it gives you kind of a nice right angle. Now I've got it all stitched up, and I'm just going to trim the edges nice and flush. And now all we need to do, since we've got it in there just right, is line it up and hole punch it, and we've got the exact same thing. We've reused and repurposed this plastic sleeve that was not going to benefit us really anymore because it was all bent and wonky. So now we've repurposed it and we're using it to make use out of more pieces of product that we may, at least I may not have used had I not repurposed it. So now I've got a couple others that I did and I hole punched them, and I've got a whole set of them now. So now what I want to do is I want to go through all this other product that's similar in size to these pieces. Now I have all of these internal pieces and file tabs and whatnots that came with those original chipboard pieces. This is a Jenny Bolin set that's about the same size, that has some neat ledgers and file tabs. And then we've got the snap. I've got this Amy Tangerine travel book. It's not in a format that I would use normally. I probably would cut it up and use different pieces of it for a project like this. So what I decided to do is just get out all the pieces that were from these little mini albums by October Afternoon and start going through them. Since the paper's already, the internal pieces of these mini albums are cut to the size of the chipboard, I'm just going to use these because they come in all kinds of fun designs that will mix and match beautifully, and there's lots of colors that I'd like to use anyway, and it's already cut to size, so why not use it? So we're just using it in a different format than it was originally intended, and that's okay. So I've picked out and narrowed down some of the pieces that I was looking at, and I pulled together some of the other pattern papers that I was thinking of using in my little album, and I'll go into more detail about that album in just a bit. But right now I want to cover these boards up with some of these papers. Now I have two of a lot of these papers in most circumstances, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to cover each side of this chipboard with the same paper so that I have a nice unified look on both sides of this chipboard. So this is a really fun white distressed wood grain that I'm going to put on either side of this particular piece of chipboard. Now this one has holes in it, and you'll see what we're going to do with that in just a minute. But right now I'm going to put it on and I'm going to line it up with the holes on the chipboard, which are up against where we stitched the plastic onto the chipboard. And we're going to set that one aside. I'm going to do the same thing with this polka dotted, it's almost like a linen type texture, polka dotted. And now I was looking at some other ones thinking, well, maybe I won't do that, but I ended up using this polka dot. And again, I'm going to put all the holes that are on here, pre-cut holes, line them up where I have them, because we're going to do something to cover those holes up in just a minute, but we want them all on the same side. So here we go, just a quick attachment with the ATG. It's multi-purpose and works fantastically well on projects like this. So there we have them all stitched up. So now we're going to get out some coordinating washi tape. Now this is something that I've done for a while now in a lot of my books, is cover up holes, or even I've done it with even the plastic to cover up the holes if I wanted to just add some additional color and texture to my little inserts. So that covers it up really nicely. Add some color, add some texture. I'm just going to trim it out at the top here. And there you go. You've got it all covered up. You don't see the stitching. You don't see the holes. And it adds a really fun design element. I'm going to do something in a different but coordinating washi tape on the other one as well. And just bend it over, and there you have a nice finished look. So once we have everything trimmed up the way we want it, here I have gotten a brand new album that I really wanted to use for this new album idea that I'm doing. Now, the tricky thing is that when I got this album, the sleeves were different than the sleeves that I had. So now that I made these little guys, I have to go in and customize the holes again. But I'm not terribly worried about it, because what ends up happening is you don't even see where the holes are, and there was no overlap as far as making the holes gigantic or anything like that. I started having trouble with my hole punch when I was doing this, but it came back to life and finished everything up for me. The trick here is just that they're slippery, and so you have to, readjust every once in a while to get it done. But once we got that done, it fits in perfect, and now I'm ready to do all the sprucing up of these little dividers, and I am going to use them as month dividers, because I'm finding that one of the things that I want to do is I want to go back to a seasonal scrapping as far as doing my everyday scrapping. Seasonally makes the most sense for my life right now, and breaking it down into months, an album into 3-month increments, seems to work well for me. So this is what I'm going to do, and right now I'm just checking out all my sleeves, checking out the ones that I have yet to do, but the 2 that I have done, I think I'm ready to go. I've picked out some acetate that, or transparency, however you want to call it, and I'm going to measure this out. There's a lot of different things that you could do, since these are a little bit smaller. At least my sample is smaller than the size of my page protectors. Hey, look at that. I did get a new paper trimmer, and I'm really liking it. So far, so good. And so now I'm going to trim this out to the size of my full page sheet, because my first month I really want to use this full size, and it adds a little bit of texture, a little bit of extra dimension, and softens the look a little bit. So that's what I'm doing here, is I'm just trimming this out to size, and we're going to use these little scraps in just a bit. So you could use this as just a border if you wanted. You could just slip it into the paper and fit it flush to the side. That was one thing that I was considering, but then I decided that I was going to make tabs. Now I got out my score pal, because I couldn't find any of my scoring blades for my my paper trimmer, so I just decided to score it several times with this thick, this is an older Hambly acetate. So now what I'm doing is I'm folding it in half, and you could do it the full length if you wanted to. And I think that was originally what I was intending to do, was to put it the full length, and that would be a really pretty cool addition to the side, and then make it would make it flush with the rest. But as I was doing this, I decided, you know what? I'm going to use these as tabs. So I'm going to trim them down. And I trimmed them down into 2-inch tabs, and I was able to get 3 out of this particular piece. And what I'm going to do is, because I haven't stitched this edge or anything, I'm going to just slip it in between the pieces of paper because I didn't do a heavy glue down. And I did the same thing on the other page, and then I stitched it. And that will make it heavy duty. That's not going anywhere. And I stitched it back and forth several times, and I made sure that my bobbin thread was the same as my top thread, so that when you turn the page, you don't have 2 different threads. So now that I have my full bases all ready to go, I just embellished them. And here you can see this is the front of my April divider, and I added that Hambly sheet in between my full page of pattern paper, so you can see the back and the embellishments that I added, just some dimension, a little bit here and there, and I put the month and the date. And then here is the May one. Now this one has a lot more going on. I used a partial sheet of the acetate, and then when you turn it over, you don't see the acetate any longer. And this one has a few more layers, but when you turn it over, it's real nice and colorful, but real simple. Now this would be a great place to put some envelopes with some notes or some artwork, maybe letters from your kids, all fun stuff. And this just shows a little bit of the detail and how if you look under that washi tape, you really can't see. I mean, you can see them, but not real well, that the holes that we covered up. That's going to do it for this episode of Make Use Monday. I hope you enjoyed learning how to possibly use and reuse and repurpose those chipboard album covers and the pieces of unwanted plastic sheets and card protectors and page protectors that we all have that get bent and banged up, and you can reuse them, and why not? You have them, and all it takes is a little ingenuity. Thanks so much for stopping by today and joining me for another episode of Make Use Monday. Check back in a couple weeks and I'll have another episode for you. Until then, stop by my shop, amyhellerdesign.com, and subscribe here on my YouTube channel. Thanks so much and have a great day.